Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Mirror Dungeon video. Today we'll be using perhaps one of the strangest status effects in the game of Paralysis. I say that because it's one of the few status effects in the game that serves as both a buff and a debuff at the same time. What it does is automatically sets your coin power value to 0, which for most identities and enemies in the game serves as a debuff. However, for negative coins in particular, it's perhaps the best buff they can ask for, as it guarantees that regardless of what their current sanity is, they will always roll their maximum value. Despite this though, Paralysis does have one very glaring flaw that keeps it from being anything but a very mediocre debuff. It always activates regardless of whether or not it actually does anything. What I mean by this is if you have Paralysis and roll Tails, it will still consume the Paralysis even though it does literally nothing on a Tails roll. In regards to enemies having Paralysis, this flaw is significantly less of a problem, as more often than not you'll be at max sanity, almost guaranteeing the fact that it will actually do something. However, when we have the ability to use it, the same cannot be said, because unless you're fighting an enemy who is designed to have high sanity all the time, it will only ever work around 50% of the time. The worst part about it is that there's a very easy solution to this. Simply change Paralysis to only activate on Hez rolls and it instantly becomes a much more usable status effect instead of something that will only ever work once in a blue moon. It's a completely negligible status effect in its current state and something that can pretty much be entirely ignored. In fact, there's only one fight in the entire game where I consider Paralysis to be the main threat, and that's against the Dream-Devouring Silt Current. And the only reason why that's the case is because in order to beat him, you kind of have to use an ego, which typically only has a single coin, making the Paralysis incredibly impactful. Everywhere else it does almost nothing, and I do wish it was a more useful status effect. Anyway, to start the run off, we take these starter buffs and find these ego gifts on the first floor of the Forgotten before making it to the boss against G-Corp. So, Paralysis, right? It's a bit of a weird status effect, because mostly because it's a status effect that just honestly doesn't really do much. Like it has the potential to be really strong, right? But the problem with it is that there's really no check to see whether or not it's actually doing anything. Like, my biggest problem with Paralysis is the fact that it makes it so your coin power is always 0, right? So there's no actual check to see whether or not the Paralysis actually does anything, right? Like, what I'm trying to say is, if you roll Tails, Paralysis doesn't care. It's still gonna activate. And like, if you roll Tails with Paralysis, then Paralysis does nothing, you know? It only works if you roll heads. And that's in the case of whether or not it's being a buff or a debuff. And that is my biggest issue with Paralysis. We take the rusted cutting knife and night vision goggles for our reward before heading into To Be Pierced for the next floor. Here we buy Rags, Arrested Him, and Awe before making it to the boss against the Drifting Fox. Fairly interesting fight. Let's see, we could do something pretty interesting here. So, Paralysis. What is it? It's a debuff and a buff. Mostly a debuff, but also it doesn't do anything because it's not guaranteed to have any value at all. And that's the biggest problem with it. Also, this is kind of turning into more of an N-Corp showcase than a Paralysis one. Considering, yeah. With Mirror Dungeon 6 coming out, they did buff the N-Corp specific ego gift. The fusion one, I mean. So that now it doesn't actually require a full N-Corp team. It literally just buffs any of the N-Corp identities, regardless of whether or not there are any more on the field. Which is nice. Because now you don't need to use the absolutely worthless ones like En Merceau. It's still worth, like, bringing the full N-Corp team, though, because, like, that ego gift is really, really good. It basically makes them normal identities. Or not even normal identities, just like, yeah, it's just a really, really good ego gift. Probably one of the best, like, in terms of just straight up buffing the characters. But anyway, Paralysis, yeah. Is it even doing anything? Probably not. I mean, I'm not really using the Paralysis skills. I'm trying to, but... like, it doesn't do anything when you're staggered. You need proper... Unless it's specifically next turn Paralysis Infliction, you need proper, like, skill lineup. You need to get lucky with the speed tiers, you know? Because if your Paralysis Inflictor rolls minimum speed, then you're basically not going to get any value out of it. But we get a little bit here, which is nice. Not a whole lot. Actually, it is decent because it's on the big skill. So it makes it actually a guaranteed clash win here. So, yippee! Paralysis value. Let's go. Look at that. It did something. Actually, it didn't because it rolled tails. Oh my god. Paralysis is so dumb. Hey, there's some paralysis value. Yippee. Didn't actually do anything because the guy just died anyways to bleed, but whatever. It counts. We take the golden urn and pre-order discount before heading into the unconfronting for the next floor. Here we buy an extra skill too, while also fusing hemorrhagic shock and bloody mist before making it to the boss against Chroma. This right here is why N-Corp is busted. Like, they get the full value from, you know, the bleed damage shenanigans. And then they also get their super buff from the wholeness ego gift. So they just go off. Yeah, this is unstoppable. Rip. Yeah. Blade Lineage Merceau is probably the worst Paralysis, like, character. He technically counts because he can do it, but, like, unless you have his specific ego gifts, let's be honest, he's never going to be doing it. Who do I want to be staggered? Gregor, because Gregor sucks.
칼날이 잘 드네요. 아마 그 공격이 약점이었겠죠?
At least Paralysis is doing something. It's like very negligible, but it's doing something at least. So there's that. Chroma's also a pretty easy boss fight. The only thing that actually makes her difficult is if you're soloing her, because in that case, she can just stagger lock you permanently. But, you know, if you're not doing a solo, then it doesn't matter because you just ignore it. Like, you have 6 extra bodies, you know? Her stagger doesn't do anything. And again, Paralysis isn't doing anything here because speed tiers just weren't right. Chroma was faster than everyone who couldn't inflict paralysis, which meant that we had to clash with the paralysis inflictors, which is not what you want to be doing. And now we don't have any paralysis skills other than next turn, so even if we wanted to, we can't exactly do it. It's just such a mediocre status effect. And part of it has to do with its distribution, you know? Another part, just how awkward it is to use. But yeah, as I said before, most of it is actually due to the fact that it just doesn't work half the time. We take a duplicate and Sun Shower for a reward before heading into time-killing time for the next floor. Here we fuse Punctured Memory before making it to the boss against the Time Ripper. Alright, Time Ripper versus Paralysis. Who will win? The answer is us, because we do just stupid amounts of damage. Alright, so Paralysis should do something here, because we did get a little bit lucky with our speed. Right there, 3 paralysis. Actually, it might not, because I don't actually remember if his evade is targeting somebody who's actually attacking him. Ah, it doesn't. It doesn't even work. Oh my god, it's so sad. I'm only allowing myself to use egos that can inflict paralysis, so that makes some clashes like this one against Extraction a little bit scarier. Like that was pretty much a guaranteed clash loss, but we got lucky, and yep, bleed damage into phase 2. Paralysis yet again, doing absolutely nothing. Very cool. Here we'll be able to take advantage of paralysis at least a little bit. Like, the main reason paralysis did nothing that previous turn is because the Time Ripper was just slow. Or, not slow, fast, the opposite. And because of that, we couldn't really go fast enough to be able to do anything. And it's probably going to be another problem here in a second. Gregor got good speed, and so that's something at least. So we can inflict a single paralysis against one attack of his, and that's it. Very cool. Gregor's paralysis could have helped there, but yeah, it was either clashing against that other skill or this one, and now he has 45 sanity, so it does nothing. Yippee. You need more than a single paralysis to do anything. I mean, this is probably the best case scenario to actually get good value out of paralysis, is against a character who has max sanity. And it's also pretty good against unbreakable coins too, because it just cancels it out entirely. But it's like, this is... You could do the whole paralysis shenanigans, right? To try and manipulate it to have a very easy clash win. Or you could just use a skill that has a lot of clash power naturally. You know? That's the biggest problem with paralysis. You just need so much of it for it to be any good. Because a single paralysis does basically nothing.
핵심적인 스프레드에 있던 아르카나를 부쉈어. 이제 서서히 힘을 잃어갈 거야. 좀 좋아지자.
Like that right there was probably the best use of paralysis, and it was exclusively because Hong Lu has probably the most paralysis infliction out of anyone with 6 on his skill 3. Alright, and Ledger Domain is also like the second best, I'd say, for pure paralysis with 4 on a 3 AoE. Which I think that's like the bare minimum. You need the bare minimum paralysis you need to be considered any good is like 3. Any less than that and it does nothing basically. We take the prepaid time receipt and charred disc for our reward before heading into Yield My Flesh for the final floor. Here we find the rusted hilt and fractured blade, while also buying Piece of a Relationship and fusing the Book of Vengeance and Crushed Memory before making it to the boss against Bamboo-Hatted Kim. Alright, here we go, Bamboo-Hatted Kim. Nothing like using a status effect that primarily buffs negative coin identities against a negative coin boss, am I right? It's okay, bleed damage is going to absolutely wreck him, and the paralysis is going to do next to nothing. Oh, we missed the coin. No, that's no paralysis infliction for Faust. How tragic. I'm trying to help you, Kim. Let me give you paralysis, please. Yes. I'm going to actually try to do as much paralysis as possible. Which isn't a whole lot because most people suck at it, so... I mean, the bleed damage is probably gonna tick before we get any paralysis value. But hey, that's a lot. 6. Look at that. Look at that, it's doing stuff. It buffed him for a single coin. I consider that a success.
괜찮은 공격이네요. 앞으로도 그렇게만 해주세요. 우리가 우세를 점하고 있어. 하지만 여기서 방심하면 안 돼.
썰어볼까?
I don't think Kim survives here, and even if he does, the bleed damage gets him next turn. I mean, look at Faust. It's just... N-Corp's ridiculous in the Mirror Dungeon. This run really does make me want to just do a full N-Corp team. Maybe I'll do them next. We'll see. Going to do everything in my power to buff Kim as much as possible here. Yay! Paralysis buffed him again. It doesn't matter because we're resistant to slash damage, but still, it did something. Look at that. It's working. And then he just bleeds out and dies. Perfect. I love paralysis.
순수한 세상으로.
And that's how I beat Mirror Dungeon 6 hard using only identities with Paralysis. I didn't feel like going all the way to 10 floors today, but unlike most times, I think 5 floors is more than enough to showcase Paralysis in its full glory. In its current state, it's only really good when you have a lot of it, and most identities who can use it either don't have enough or need speed in order to make good use of it. Overall, it's a fine status effect for what it is, but it could be substantially better with just a very small tweak. Anyway, that's it from me. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Goodbye!